Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a lot to unpack today, and I'm so glad you're here. We are going to look at how localized border conflicts can literally send massive economic and strategic ripples across the entire globe. Right now, we're navigating a really complex geopolitical landscape, specifically focusing on the escalating tensions between the US and Iran. We'll explore how those distant shockwaves actually end up dictating strategic maritime defense for nations as far away as India. Our absolute focus today is on the real facts on the ground, drawing strictly from our source material to give you a clear, unbiased look at what's actually unfolding.
So let's ground ourselves right away with a number, 12. According to the source reports, we are currently on the 12th night of military strikes in the region. Now, there was a brief ceasefire, a moment where it really seemed like things might pause, but that's completely fractured. The source actually compares it to a train that briefly stops at a station, someone pulls the emergency chain, and then it just lurches right back forward with no real destination in sight. We are officially on night 12 of renewed escalation, and both sides are absolutely digging in.
So, here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover the escalation of US-Iran tensions, the retaliation doctrine, threats to global choke points, tariffs, and India's defiance, and wrap up with strategic lessons for India.
Let's dive right into Section 1, US-Iran tensions escalate.
Whenever we analyze geopolitics, it's so important to remember there is a very real human toll. Impartially reporting the claims from our sources, recent U.S. strikes have resulted in 2 reported casualties. It's a really stark reminder that while we're sitting here talking about maps and doctrines, there are actual lives and physical territories caught in the crossfire of these international disputes.
So what exactly is being targeted? According to the source, the U.S. has hit what's described as civilian infrastructure. We're talking bridges, power plants, and very notably, the Shalom Sheikh border crossing. This is a crossing right on the Iran-Iraq border that's heavily used by pilgrims traveling to Karbala. On the flip side, the source reports that Iran is targeting Western commercial offices in the region, places like Amazon and Google. They are also directly threatening neighboring Gulf countries that currently host U.S. military bases. Both sides are clearly trying to hit where it hurts the most.
Moving on to Section 2, the Retaliation Doctrine. So what's driving Iran's response? Well, Iranian Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi has publicly declared a doctrine of strict proportionality, quite literally calling it an eye for an eye. The source material really emphasizes that Iran is weighing the damages on a scale. They're asserting that whatever infrastructure or asset the U.S. targets, they are going to mirror that response. It's this calculated tit-for-tat approach that obviously raises the stakes of any single military move.
But the threats are going way beyond just regional infrastructure. The sources relay a particularly dramatic claim here: alleged threats of assassination originating from Iran, specifically called out by figures like Ayatollah Khamenei's son, directed at Donald Trump. Now, according to the reports, this intense political rhetoric actually caused the U.S. to change flight paths twice during a NATO summit in Turkey, basically out of fear that a plane might be targeted. It really just shows you how deeply this psychological warfare has penetrated global leadership.
Which brings us to Section 3, threats to global choke points.
To really grasp the global risk here, we have to talk about what a maritime choke point actually is. Essentially, it's a strategic, highly narrow waterway that connects 2 larger bodies of water. Because so much of the world's shipping has to squeeze through these specific tight passages, they are incredibly critical to the global economy. And unfortunately, that makes them highly vulnerable to blockades.
So, which choke points are on the radar? The source points to a few massive ones. First up, the Strait of Hormuz. This is absolutely vital for dollar-based petroleum trade. The source actually notes that U.S. security guarantees in exchange for this dollar-based oil trade are what built the wealth of nations like Saudi Arabia. Second is Bab el-Mandeb. This is an incredibly narrow 13-kilometer passage where ships are practically sitting ducks for targeting. And finally, there's the broader threat to those Gulf nations hosting U.S. bases, like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and Jordan. If Iran chokes off these waterways, the global economic fallout would be immediate.
All right, let's zoom out a bit for Section 4, tariffs and India's defiance.
Get a load of this number. 500%. Yeah, according to our source material, this massive figure represents the severe tariff threats made by Donald Trump against India. It's a classic economic pressure tactic, right? Using the threat of crippling tariffs to try and force a nation to alter its trade behavior.
But how is India reacting to that kind of pressure? Well, Indian industries, especially the pharmaceutical sector, have basically brushed it off. The source supports that they've adopted this hardened, dismissive approach, essentially claiming immunity. They've developed a thick skin, implying that whether the tariff is 100%, 500%, or even 1,000%, they are simply not going to be intimidated by economic bullying. It is a really bold stance of defiance. And finally, Section 5, Strategic Lessons for India.
So what does this all mean for India's own national security? The sources actually lay out two very clear, actionable steps India must take to safeguard its waters from foreign control. Step 1. Secure the Palk Strait between India and Sri Lanka. The source argues this control has to be actualized legally and physically, not just relying on historical claims. Step 2. Look east to the Strait of Malacca. The source warns that both China and the US already have bases or interests there. The lesson for India is to proactively form treaties with nations like Malaysia and Singapore right now, establishing its own naval and air bases so it isn't caught off guard.
We've covered a lot of ground today, right? Going from localized border strikes in the Middle East all the way to massive vulnerabilities in global maritime trade. When other nations clash, it really does serve as a wake-up call for everyone else. So it leaves us with this question. In an unpredictable world, is your nation doing enough to proactively secure its strategic borders before the next conflict erupts? It's a powerful lesson in geopolitics. You've got to secure your own house before the storm arrives. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the world around you.